The Monday leadership meeting started like any other. I sat in my usual chair, coffee in hand, waiting for the agenda to begin. Griffin Halvorsen, my boss, stood at the front of the room with his typical confident smile. He cleared his throat and announced the new senior strategy manager position had been filled. My heart started beating faster. I'd been waiting for this moment for months. I'm pleased to announce that Brennan Pike will be joining our senior leadership team, Griffin said. The room erupted in applause. I felt my hands go cold. Brennan Pike, the analyst I personally trained just 18 months ago. The same person who barely knew how to run a basic query when he started. Griffin continued praising Brennan's exceptional leadership potential and innovative thinking. Everyone nodded and clapped. I sat frozen, trying to understand what had just happened. Then Griffin looked directly at me. His smile shifted slightly, and he added one final comment that cut through the noise. Some people are better behind the numbers, he said. The room went quiet for just a second. I felt everyone's eyes drift toward me before quickly looking away. Something was very wrong here. I knew those numbers better than anyone in this room. After the meeting ended, Griffin asked me to stay behind. Everyone else filed out, patting Brennan on the back as they left. I remained seated, watching Griffin gather his presentation materials. Callum, I wanted to talk to you about this, he said, not quite meeting my eyes. I waited. The promotion decision wasn't easy, he continued. You're incredibly talented with data. Everyone knows that. But leadership requires more than technical skills. I nodded slowly, letting him talk. It's about visibility and relationships, Griffin explained. Brennan has been building strong connections with our executive team. He presents well in meetings. He has presence. The word hung in the air between us. Callum, you're brilliant with data, but leadership requires presence, Griffin said. I hope you understand. I stood up and shook his hand, keeping my face neutral. I understand, I said. As I walked toward the door, Brennan passed me in the hallway. He was carrying a thick folder with the company logo on it, the promotion packet I should have received. That night, I opened the quarterly report on my laptop. Something inside it didn't make sense. Numbers I knew by heart looked wrong. Let me tell you who I actually am. My name is Callum Rains. I'm 29 years old, and I've worked at this company for 4 years. In that time, I built the entire analytics system our department uses every single day. Every campaign metric, every client forecast, every performance dashboard runs through models I designed from scratch. When someone in leadership asks for data, they're looking at my work. When sales needs projections, they use my formulas. When marketing tracks results, they're using my frameworks. I didn't just understand the numbers. I created the system that generated them. Brennan Pike started as my assistant analyst. I taught him how to clean data, how to build queries, how to read the patterns. He was eager to learn, and I was happy to mentor him. Now he was my boss's choice for senior leadership. The thing is, every presentation Brennan gave in those executive meetings used dashboards I built. Every strategic recommendation he made came from models I developed. I pulled up the latest executive report again. The numbers still looked wrong. Revenue attribution had shifted between departments in ways that didn't match what I'd uploaded to the system. I opened the raw database at midnight. My apartment was quiet except for the hum of my laptop. I pulled up the original data file I'd submitted 3 weeks ago for the quarterly review. Then I opened the version Griffin had presented to leadership. The numbers were different. Revenue attribution for Project Horizon showed a 15% increase in Brennan's department. But in my original file, that revenue belonged to cross-functional work I had led. Project Catalyst showed similar changes. The impact metrics for Brennan's contributions were higher than what the actual data supported. I checked the file properties and timestamps. The last modification happened 2 days after I submitted the original data. Someone had gone into the system and changed the numbers before the executive presentation. My chest felt tight. I took a screenshot of both versions side by side. Then I noticed something else. The edit history showed the changes weren't random corrections. They followed a pattern. Every adjustment inflated Brennan's contributions and reduced mine. Someone had deliberately altered the data. But who had access to make these kinds of changes? I spent the next 3 days pulling reports from the past 6 months. I barely slept. My dining table became covered with printed spreadsheets and sticky notes. The pattern was unmistakable. Project Meridian from January. Brennan's impact score went from 62 to 78. Mine dropped from 85 to 71. The Atlas campaign from March. Brennan's client satisfaction rating jumped from 4.2 to 4.6. Mine stayed flat despite positive feedback I'd received directly from the client. The Q2 forecast model from April. Credit for accuracy went to Brennan's team. But I had built that entire model myself and shared it with him for training purposes. Every single time. The changes happened after I submitted the original data, but before Griffin presented to leadership. I created a timeline. The modifications always occurred within 48 hours of executive meetings. Someone with administrative access was systematically rewriting our department's performance history. My hands shook as I highlighted the edit timestamps. This wasn't a mistake or a system glitch. This was deliberate. Someone was changing the story the numbers told. The admin access logs took me 2 hours to pull. Most employees couldn't see them, but I'd built the reporting system, so I knew where everything was stored. I filtered by the timestamps when the data changes occurred. The system tracked every login, every modification, every file touched. All the edits came from the same account. Griffin Halvorsen, not Brennan. My boss himself had been going into the system and adjusting performance data. Every change benefited Brennan and diminished my contributions. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. Griffin had administrator access because he approved it himself 2 years ago. He claimed he needed it for emergency reviews. Now I understood what those emergency reviews really meant. I checked the login times more carefully. Griffin made these changes late at night, usually between 10 p.m. and midnight. Always within 24 hours before a leadership meeting where performance would be discussed. He wasn't just favoring Brennan through subjective opinions. He was rewriting objective data to build a false narrative. The promotion suddenly made perfect sense. According to the altered numbers, Brennan looked like a rising star. According to the real numbers, I was the one driving results. 2 weeks after the promotion announcement, Brennan started running meetings I used to lead. Griffin made the change without explanation, just updated the calendar invites. I sat in the back of the conference room while Brennan presented our monthly strategy review. He stood at the front, clicking through slides with comfortable confidence. Then I noticed something familiar. The client retention analysis he was presenting. I'd written that exact analysis 3 months ago. Same methodology, same insights, even the same phrasing in the summary section. Brennan talked about his approach to segmentation modeling. But those were my words. My framework. Later that week, he presented a forecasting strategy to the sales team. The entire presentation looked identical to a model I'd built in January. Same structure, same formulas, same visual design. During his third presentation, I leaned forward in my chair. Brennan had pulled up a performance dashboard on the screen. My stomach dropped. That dashboard didn't exist in any shared folder. I'd built it privately as a prototype to test new campaign forecasting methods. I'd never shown it to anyone. How did Brennan have access to my private work? I left the meeting early and went straight to my desk. My hands were shaking as I logged into the system. I navigated to my personal project folder, the one I used for experimental models before they were ready to share. There it was. The forecasting dashboard Brennan had just presented. The file I created 6 weeks ago and never distributed. I checked the file's sharing permissions. It should have been visible only to me. But the access log showed something different. 2 weeks ago, someone had copied the file from my private folder. I clicked on the details. The copy action came from Griffin's administrator account. He'd taken my prototype dashboard and placed it directly into Brennan's project folder. My experimental work, the tool I'd built on my own time to improve our forecasting accuracy, was now part of Brennan's portfolio. I took screenshots of everything. The original file in my private folder, the copy in Brennan's folder, the access log showing Griffin's action. That dashboard was now being presented to executives as Brennan's innovation. My work had been quietly transferred to someone else's name. I opened the shared drive and navigated to Brennan's project folder. The stolen dashboard was right there, renamed Pike_forecasting_model_v2. I checked the full directory. There were other files too. A client analysis report I'd written in February. A presentation template I'd designed. 3 different data visualization tools I'd built over the past year. All of them had been copied from my personal workspace into Brennan's folder. All by Griffin's administrator account. The timestamps showed a pattern. Each file was copied shortly before Brennan had a major presentation or client meeting. Griffin was systematically feeding my work to Brennan. I scrolled through the dates. This had been happening for 7 months. Long before the promotion decision, Griffin had been building Brennan's reputation using my actual output. The forecasting dashboard was now marked as part of the official executive reporting system. According to the file properties, it was credited to Brennan as the primary developer. My prototype had become his production tool. My innovation was now his accomplishment. I exported the entire access log and saved it to 3 different locations. The email arrived on Wednesday morning. It was from Marcus Webb, our biggest client. The subject line read, "Excellent forecasting tool." I opened it. Marcus had written to Brennan praising the innovative new forecasting dashboard that had helped his team make better quarterly decisions. He called it exactly the kind of forward-thinking solution he valued in our partnership. I'd met with Marcus twice to understand his forecasting challenges. I'd built that dashboard specifically to solve the problems he'd described. Now he was thanking Brennan for my work. 20 minutes later, Griffin forwarded Marcus's email to the entire leadership team. His message was brief. Great example of the innovation Brennan brings to client relationships. This is the kind of thinking that drives our success. 3 executives replied with congratulations. The chief strategy officer mentioned it as a model for other client accounts. I sat at my desk, staring at the email thread. My prototype tool, built in my personal folder, copied without permission, was now being celebrated as proof of Brennan's value. Griffin had found a way to make my work disappear and reappear under someone else's name. And everyone believed it. Friday afternoon, an email arrived from Amanda Chun in finance. The subject line was marked urgent, revenue attribution discrepancies. Her message was professional but concerned. The finance team had been reconciling quarterly numbers and found significant differences between the raw analytics system and the executive slides Griffin had presented. "We're seeing inconsistencies in department revenue attribution," Amanda wrote. "The numbers in the leadership deck don't match the source data. Can someone clarify which version is accurate?" She'd sent the email to the entire department leadership team. I felt my pulse quicken. Finance had found the altered numbers. They'd noticed what I'd been tracking for weeks. Griffin responded within minutes. "Thanks for flagging this, Amanda. Likely a reporting sync issue. We'll investigate and get back to you." But Amanda sent a follow-up. "We need the original data owner to clarify. This affects our quarterly projections." The room felt very quiet. I was the original data owner. Everyone knew it. My phone buzzed. It was an email directly from Amanda. "Callum, can you send me the unedited source files? We need to reconcile these differences before Monday's board meeting." I didn't hesitate. I opened my archive of original data files, the versions I'd submitted before Griffin's modifications. Every timestamp was intact. Every calculation was documented. I attached 6 months of unedited reports to my reply. "Amanda, here are the source files directly from the analytics system," I wrote. "These are the original numbers before any adjustments. All timestamps and version history are included." I kept my tone calm and professional, just providing the requested data. I hit send. Within an hour, Amanda replied, "Thank you, Callum. I'm seeing significant variances. Can we schedule a meeting Monday morning to review these differences in detail?" I confirmed the meeting. Griffin sent me a message 10 minutes later. "Callum, let's touch base before you meet with finance. Want to make sure we're aligned on the reporting approach." I didn't respond immediately. I saved his message and added it to my growing documentation folder. That weekend, I organized everything I'd collected. Screenshots of altered data, access logs showing Griffin's late-night edits, file histories showing my work copied into Brennan's folders, timeline comparisons of real versus reported performance. The numbers told a clear story. Monday's meeting would make that story visible. Monday morning, I walked into the small conference room where Amanda and 2 other finance analysts were waiting. They had 3 monitors set up, each displaying different versions of our department's data. Amanda pulled up my original files on one screen and Griffin's executive presentations on another. "The variance is substantial," she said, highlighting the differences. "Project Horizon alone shows a 23% difference in attributed revenue. That's significant enough to affect our quarterly projections." One of the analysts pointed to the timeline. "These changes happened after the original submission dates." Who modified the source data? I pulled up the access logs on my laptop and shared my screen. The modifications came from an administrator account. Amanda leaned forward. "Which administrator?" I showed them the login trails. Every edit traced back to Griffin Halvorsen. The room went silent for a moment. These changes directly impact our financial reporting, Amanda said quietly. We need to escalate this to senior leadership. She made notes in her tablet. I'm required to report data integrity issues that affect financial projections. This qualifies. I nodded. I'd simply provided the information they requested. Finance was following their own protocols. Amanda closed her laptop. Thank you for the clarity, Callum. We'll take it from here. Griffin called an emergency team meeting Tuesday afternoon. Everyone gathered in the main conference room, confused about the sudden schedule change. Griffin stood at the front, looking more stressed than I'd ever seen him. His usual confident posture was gone. We've identified some system errors in our reporting, he announced. Finance has raised concerns about data accuracy. It appears there may have been synchronization issues between our analytics platform and the executive reporting tools. He clicked through a slide about system integrity and process improvements. We'll need to restructure how we handle analytics to prevent future discrepancies, Griffin continued. This is a priority issue that affects our credibility with leadership. Then he looked at Brennan. Brennan, I'm assigning you to oversee the investigation. Work with IT to identify where these errors originated. Brennan nodded, but I saw his face had gone pale. Griffin avoided looking at me during the entire meeting. He talked about automated errors and platform bugs, as if the access logs didn't exist. The meeting ended with a vague action plan and no real answers. As everyone filed out, I stayed seated, watching Griffin gather his materials with shaking hands. Brennan found me in the break room an hour later. He looked nervous, glancing around to make sure we were alone. Callum, can we talk? He said quietly. I poured my coffee and waited. I didn't realize the reports had been altered, Brennan said. His voice was barely above a whisper. Griffin gave me the data. I just presented it. I didn't know it was different from what you submitted. I took a sip of coffee, saying nothing. Finance is asking questions I can't answer, Brennan continued. They want to know who changed the numbers and why. Griffin told me to handle it, but I don't even know where to start. He ran his hand through his hair. Is there any way to fix this? Can the numbers be adjusted to match what leadership expects? I set my coffee cup down. The numbers are what they are, Brennan. They don't need to be fixed. They need to be reported accurately. But the board meeting is next week, Brennan said. If these discrepancies become public, then they become public, I said. Brennan looked at me for a long moment, then walked away. That evening, I started documenting everything with even more detail. Every conversation, every email, every file. I created a secure archive of every piece of evidence. Screenshots of the altered reports. Server logs showing Griffin's edits. Exported datasets with full version histories. Timestamps proving when changes occurred versus when data was submitted. I organized it chronologically, January through June, each month showing the pattern of modifications. The evidence was methodical and irrefutable. I saved copies in 3 different locations: my personal drive, an encrypted cloud backup, and a physical external drive I kept at home. Then I noticed something new on the company calendar. A meeting had appeared for the following week: compliance audit, analytics, and reporting systems. The attendees list included senior leadership, the legal team, and representatives from our external auditors. I checked who scheduled it. The request came from the Chief Compliance Officer's office. Finance had escalated the discrepancies. Now compliance was involved. I made one more backup of all my documentation. Whatever happened next would require complete records. Wednesday morning, I received a calendar invite for a preliminary meeting with the audit team. They wanted to understand the analytics workflow and data management protocols. The invite specifically requested the primary system administrator and data architects. That meant me. I accepted the meeting. The compliance audit began the following Monday. 2 external auditors sat in our conference room with laptops and legal pads. They were joined by our Chief Compliance Officer and the head of internal audit. They asked Griffin to explain our analytics system and reporting process. He described the workflow in general terms, talking about team collaboration and quality controls. Then they asked the specific question: who manages the analytics models and maintains the source data? Griffin hesitated. He looked around the room before answering. Callum Rains is our lead data architect, he finally said. He built most of our core systems. The lead auditor made a note. And who has administrative access to modify the data? I have administrative rights for oversight purposes, Griffin said. along with 2 IT managers. Can we see the access logs for the past 6 months? The auditor asked. Griffin's face went rigid. I'll need to work with IT to pull those records. We've already requested them, the auditor replied. They should be ready this afternoon. The meeting continued with technical questions about data governance and version control. I answered most of them, explaining how the system tracked changes and maintained audit trails. By Thursday afternoon, the auditors had the system logs. They called a closed meeting with senior leadership. I wasn't invited, but I heard about it from Amanda in finance. The logs showed every modification Griffin had made to the department data. Each edit was timestamped and tracked. The pattern was undeniable, consistent changes that inflated Brennan's performance metrics and diminished mine. The auditors had also pulled the calendar data. Griffin's edits happened within 24 hours before every major leadership presentation. The timing wasn't coincidental. Most damaging was what they found next. The logs showed when Griffin copied files from my private workspace into Brennan's folders. My forecasting dashboard, my client analysis tools, my presentation templates, all transferred without authorization. Then they discovered the promotion review file. Griffin had submitted performance data for Brennan's promotion that didn't match the source system. The numbers he presented to justify Brennan's advancement were the altered versions. The edits happened 3 days before Brennan's promotion was announced. Friday morning, I received an email from HR. Griffin Halvorsen had been placed on administrative leave pending the completion of the investigation. The office felt different when I arrived. People spoke in quiet voices. Brennan wasn't at his desk. The executive meeting happened the following Tuesday. I was called to attend. The conference room held the CEO, the chief operating officer, the chief compliance officer, and 3 other senior leaders. Griffin was there too, sitting at the end of the table with a lawyer beside him. The lead auditor presented their findings on the main screen. Side-by-side comparisons of original data versus modified reports. Access logs showing Griffin's administrative changes. Timeline analysis proving the edits coincided with promotion reviews and performance evaluations. Griffin tried to explain. These were strategic projections, he said. I was adjusting the numbers to reflect anticipated performance, not historical results. It's a forecasting methodology. The auditor pulled up another screen. These changes were presented as actual results, not projections. They were used in financial reporting and personnel decisions. Griffin's lawyer whispered something to him. He fell silent. The CEO asked to see the specific data about Brennan's promotion. The auditor showed the before and after comparisons. Every metric that justified Brennan's advancement had been altered. How much of Brennan's reported performance was based on modified data? The CEO asked. The auditor answered. Approximately 78% of the supporting metrics were adjusted from their original values. The room went completely quiet. The numbers were on the screen for everyone to see. Projects credited to Brennan were actually mine. Performance scores that supported his promotion had been inflated. The CEO turned to me. Callum, can you verify that these are your original submissions? I pulled up my archived files on my laptop and shared the screen. The timestamps matched. The data was identical to what the auditors had found in the system logs. Yes, I said. These are the original reports I submitted. The chief compliance officer asked the question I'd been waiting for. Were you aware these modifications were being made? Not until after Brennan's promotion was announced, I answered. I discovered the discrepancies when reviewing the quarterly report. The COO looked at the timeline again. So the performance data that justified this promotion was systematically altered over a period of 7 months? The auditor nodded. That's what the evidence shows. The CEO closed the folder in front of her. She looked at Griffin directly. Did you modify department performance data to influence promotion decisions? Griffin opened his mouth, then closed it. His lawyer touched his arm, and he remained silent. The CEO stood up. The meeting was over. Griffin was placed on indefinite administrative leave that afternoon. The announcement went out to the department within an hour. No details were provided, just that he was stepping away pending an internal review. 2 days later, Brennan's promotion was quietly rescinded. HR called it an administrative correction. He returned to his previous role as senior analyst. I didn't speak to him. We passed each other in hallways without making eye contact. The following week, the CEO requested a private meeting with me. I sat across from her in her corner office, unsure what to expect. The investigation has concluded, she said. The compliance team confirmed that performance data was systematically altered to favor certain personnel decisions. That's a serious breach of corporate governance. I nodded. You built the analytics system this company runs on, she continued. You've demonstrated both technical excellence and integrity throughout this process. We want to offer you the senior strategy manager position. It should have been yours from the beginning. She slid a formal offer letter across her desk. I looked at the document. The title, the salary, the responsibilities I'd effectively been performing without recognition. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out an envelope. I slid it across the table toward her. The CEO looked at the envelope, then at me. This is my resignation, I said. Effective in 2 weeks. She opened it and read the brief letter inside. Her expression shifted from surprise to something that looked like understanding. You're leaving, she said. It wasn't a question. I received an offer from Kelton Analytics 3 weeks ago, I explained. I've accepted their director-level position leading their data strategy division. The CEO set the letter down. Because of what happened here. Partly, I said, but also because I've realized something about my career. I don't want to work somewhere I have to prove my value after 4 years of building critical systems. I want to work somewhere that recognized what I bring from the beginning. She nodded slowly. I understand. Though I wish you'd reconsider. I appreciate the offer, I said. I really do. But the promotion should have happened based on the real numbers, not after an investigation exposed the fake ones. That tells me something about how decisions get made here. We talked for a few more minutes about transition planning. She asked if I'd help train my replacement. I agreed to document everything thoroughly. As I left her office, I felt lighter than I had in months. 3 months later, I heard through former colleagues that Griffin had been terminated. The investigation concluded that he'd violated multiple company policies. The falsified reporting had damaged the company's quarterly outlook, and 2 board members had raised concerns about data integrity. Griffin tried to fight the termination, but the evidence was too clear. The access logs, the altered files, the timeline of changes, everything pointed to deliberate manipulation. The company issued a correction to their quarterly earnings, acknowledging that previous reports contained inaccuracies. Their stock price dropped 4%.